that growth, the way we perceive it as GDP growth, is unsustainable, even if ecologically speaking, we wouldn't have any of the problem that Greta and others talk about. The financial system is unsustainable, even if we didn't have any ecological problems. That doesn't mean that we don't have them, we do, but that's not the only way in which the financial and economic system of today is unsustainable. Not only does it destroy its surroundings, it destroys itself. And I will try to argue that it is the growth fetish that actually does this. I think our financial system could be ranked as the biggest threat to a Western civilization. If you remember back to 2008, 2009 crises, which almost broke down the American backbone of the whole financial system, and later it attacked Europe, there were no Russian or Chinese meddling, as they hear about the suspicion in American elections and the Brexit vote. There were no enemies from the outside that actually caused the nearest situation of our civilization to collapse. I could maybe even, well, yeah. So the reason for that collapse, take Greece, for example. Greece, if there wouldn't have been help from other countries, Greece would really suffer economically, to the point that it would have been extremely easy for a foreign country to occupy them militarily. They were so on their knees that the country was unable to defend itself. And the reason why we have done this is not because of economic slowdown, but because of debt. And this debt we have gathered, as my pre-speakers I think explained quite well. We've created this debt for one reason only, because we wanted to grow. So what we have done in our past is that we have sold stability of our economy. The easiest way how to look at it is the amount of debt. And we were buying growth. So selling stability, buying growth, giving debt money into the economy and receiving growth. Now, the trick is, and we have been doing this for, let's say, 2 or maybe even 3 generations. The tricky part about this is that we've succeeded. We have managed to create a system which can grow really rapidly, but it's also extremely fragile. Now take a look at, if you remember 11 years ago, 2007, 2008, when the financial crisis started. It didn't start in Europe, because as you remember, it started in the United States of America. Now, if you looked at the statistics one day before the crisis started, you would see that the American GDP was growing for a record amount of time, and also the growth of the American GDP was actually very impressive. Also, unemployment was low, competitiveness was high. This was the time when Silicon Valley was throwing in, Steve Jobs was still alive. So it was, one invention after another. So from an economic point of view, merely statistically, the sky was blue, not a cloud upon it. And this was the moment when the American backbone broke. I call it full throttle bankruptcy. The economy was running full speed into a wall. The Greek situation is not an exemplary situation. The Greek situation really was a slowdown, and then a near-death experience or near bankruptcy experience. But that's not typical. What is typical is rather the American case or the Irish case, in which both these economies were not in a depression. If you imagine a bipolar situation or the business cycle, the American crisis didn't start here, it started here. It was a manic-driven crisis. And I could go through the history of this. In my book, I'm describing the very first business cycle in the history of mankind, which was Joseph. And this is in the first book of Moses, in the book of Genesis, chapter 42. It's easy to remember because all important numbers in life are 42, which is the meaning of life, universe, and everything, as those of you who know Douglas Adams know very much. But anyway, ever since Joseph, this story is maybe 4,000, 3,000 years old. And in the story that everybody knows, you know, Pharaoh has a dream about 7 rich years and 7 poor years. Effectively speaking, this was the first macroeconomic prediction in the history of mankind. And Joseph says, well, you know, what you should do is you shouldn't grow as much as you can grow. In other words, do not eat everything that grows during the 7 fat years, but slow down growth and take that energy and invest it in bad years. In other words, do a temporal transfer of energy. Take energy from good years, slow down growth, do not consume everything that grows. And then in the bad years, you will not die from hunger. Now, I want to fast forward that to today and jump on a slightly different topic. If you are following, as I believe you are, the current economy when it comes to fiscal stimulation, how unsuccessful we are fiscally stimulating the economy. Now, we live in Europe. You can also see this in America. Our debt levels have grown to double that what they were before the crisis, meaning that the Western world is now not less indebted than it was in 2007, but more and 2 times more indebted than it was before. Yet you do not see any impressive amount of growth. We had one crisis in 2007, 2008, 2009, and then another quite Western crisis in the year around the year 2015, where we again saw either very low levels of growth or negative growth. This was during the time when we were pumping huge amounts of money into the economy so that the economy would grow. This was also the period, which is still lasting, where we had 0 interest rates in order to stimulate the economy. In other words, we are going out of our minds. We are going out of our boxes. We're doing things that have been never done before. We're doing crazy things for one and one reason only, not because we're dying out of hunger, but because we want to grow more. And my point is that the economy, as it is today, does not want to grow. If we wouldn't have been pushing it fiscally with debt stimulation or deficit, budget deficit stimulus, if we hadn't had 0 interest rates, which is completely unnatural situation, for almost 10 years now, the economy wouldn't be growing. It's a little bit like a Japanese situation now. The Japanese economists are not stupid. The Japanese economy is not underfinanced. The Japanese economy cannot complain that they're not technologically at the edge. They cannot complain that they have foul infrastructure. They cannot complain that they have corrupt politicians or inefficient institutions. And they cannot complain that their people are lazy. I mean, you know how hardworking Japanese people are. You know, the stories about karoshi, where Japanese workers very often are ready, and they do, commit suicide because they lose their jobs. I mean, the stories how hardworking Japanese students and how hardworking the Japanese workers are, you must have heard those many times yourself. Now, the interesting thing is that even though Japanese have been trying to do everything they could, the economy is not growing. Now, one of the explanations, this is not the only one, but this is, I think, a quite popular one, is that Japan has already hit the golden ceiling, so to speak. If I can use an image, let's imagine that you have 2 iPods. You don't need a third one. Everybody already has 2. A third iPod wouldn't make sense. Like a third car doesn't make sense. I mean, 1 car is more than enough, but some families have 2. But nobody needs a third car. Even if that third car would be very, very, very cheap, very fast, very efficient, You don't need a third car. This is the reason why the Japanese economy cannot grow. I mean, this is one of the theories. Where my thinking comes in and where I'd like to contribute is, my question is following. Why do we read this as bad news? This should be a hallelujah moment for capitalism. We have entered stationary economy. The economy is no longer growing. It doesn't want to grow. We don't have to work so hard. We can relax. We can go to work only for 4 days because the economy wouldn't be growing at all if it wouldn't be stimulated constantly by fiscal and monetary tricks. Now, fiscal policy and monetary policy are tricks. You cannot build long-term growth or prosperity of your economy by using these tricks. In other words, you cannot buy growth. This seems trivial. This seems something that we should all know. It's something that a small child understands. Yet, in educated Europe, in educated America, in Japan, which has 10,000s and hundreds of thousands of economists, we still believe that we can buy growth. We can shift the energy a little bit there and here, but there is no way how to buy growth. Now, let me say that if we continue this, we will effectively and truly shoot ourselves in the leg. And I have not left the frame of economics. I have not talked about ecology. I have not talked about human relationships. I have not talked about altruism or egoism. I am still strictly keeping myself to the most classical economic reading of the economy. And even in that, the system is unsustainable and there is really no solution. What's really funny is, for example, and I have very many times quarrels with economists, what Paul Krugman says, and others, the majority of economists, I think, would agree, looking at what's happening in the world. The main thesis is like this, till today, but it started 10 years ago with the crises. Let's run into debt. Let's run budget deficits. Let's have very dovish monetary policy in order to jumpstart growth, so that we can pay our debts better, right? You have heard this many times. I'm trying to be as loyal to the mantra of our economic policy as I can. Now, this sentence has 3 parts. Let's run deficits, or let's go into debt so that we can jumpstart the economy, so that we can pay debts better. In fact, this is the only way how we believe we can pay debt, which is also a little bit crazy, but never mind. Now, this sentence, you don't even have to be an economist to see how faulty the logic is. It's enough to be a little bit of a linguist, because those are implications. So you can take the middle part away, and what you're left with is, let's increase debt so that we can pay debts better. And of course, that makes very, very, very little sense. Now, so my thesis is that growth is what could have destroyed us in 2000, could have destroyed us in 2007, 8, and 9. That growth fetish seems to be the biggest threat, internal threat of our civilization, and that we maybe already have arrived to, or are very close to the Shabbat economy. Now, let me, in the remaining minutes, let me just use maybe 2 more examples of what I mean. The question is, what is the purpose of the economy? Now, when I have a pen and I ask you, is the pen functional? It's a very small pen, but is the pen functioning? Well, you would have to ask me, does the pen write? And I say, yeah, it writes okay. So then we come to the conclusion that the pen is functioning. It's easy to say because everybody knows that the role of a pen is to write. If it doesn't write, it's not a good pen. It's not a functional pen. Now, when it comes to the economy, and I ask you, is the economy functional? Economics, sorry. Is the economy functional? The answer is a little bit complicated because we don't know what is the economy supposed to do? Is it supposed to create equal conditions? Is it supposed to be fair? Is it supposed to bring growth? Is it supposed to make sure that the majority of the population doesn't have to even think about what to eat tomorrow, because everybody in our countries knows that we don't know what we're going to eat, but we know that we are going to eat tomorrow. This is something that's a novelty in the history of Europe and pretty much our whole population. So if, for example, I believe that the role of the pen is to fry eggs, which is stupid, then every day I'll be disappointed. Every day I put a fresh egg on the pen and the egg flows down to the floor, and I can say, oh my God, this pen is so stupid. I don't know why they didn't fix it. Again and again, every morning, it malfunctions. If we believe that the economy is here to give us a work-life balance, if we are here, the economy, to show us direction, if we believe that the economy should give us tasks, like our bosses give us tasks, then we have completely misunderstood the role of economics. The role of economics is different than bringing work-life balance. We have made the economy the dictator of future directions. Instead of giving economy orders, we are subjecting everything to the economy. And this is a very famous sentence said by Bill Clinton: is the economy stupid? It's the most important thing. Is the dictate that we take is from the financial markets and from the economy. Now, I'm not against capitalism. I think it's the best system we have. I don't think it's perfect, but no other alternative has been invented or has been in any way successfully tried. But what we should try is to try and change capitalism so that it actually has a higher task than growth itself. So my thesis is also that we don't see a crisis of capitalism. Capitalism is waiting for tasks from us, human beings. We should tell it what to do. It's a little bit like, I, of course, greet you from Prague, and you know, we have a story about Golem of Prague. Golem worked fine if it was under human beings, when human beings were given Golem tasks. But then something happened, and Golem became too strong, and it started acting on its own will, and it started destroying human beings. Now, this is an archetype that you can see anywhere in the Matrix. The computers got out of hand, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So our task is to be able to be in control of this economy and not allow it to control us. So let me end with a parable about a cow, and it's a parable about capitalism. Now imagine that there's a cowboy and he's milking a cow, and suddenly the cow stops giving him milk. So he's very angry and he starts beating the cow and saying, "You're such a cow. Why did you stop giving me milk?" This is an allegory for growth. And the cow opens her mouth because it's a story, so this can happen. And the cow says, "But I've already given you all my milk. And actually, to be honest, I have given you more than you need. I've given you 12 baskets. One of them you drank yourself. The other one is leaking. The third one is rotting. The fourth one, your cats drank from you, etc., etc. And you are blaming me for not giving you enough milk. We have enough milk. We have enough money. It is not the fault of the economy that it's not giving us any more, because it already has given us everything to make the society absolutely living in conditions that no kings ever imagined. King David from the Old Testament, or pick any king from your history, never ever had a tenth of the luxury that the poorest people in our society today enjoy. I mean, look at yourself. Usually you have people preparing food for you, and this is quite normal. This was only something that happened to kings. Otherwise, the people were preparing their own food in their own families. And the choice of food that you have, Italian, Japanese, African, American, Italian, French, and Czech beer. This is something that no king ever had in the history, and we are complaining that the economy isn't growing enough. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you
good to see you.
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
We really enjoyed. I referred to the Hitchhiker Guides to the Galaxy in my introduction.
Oh, good. Good.
I just found a good quotation. Most of the intergalactical civilizations have three phases of development. The phases of how, why, and where. The how is how do we get food? The why is why do we eat? And the third is where do we have dinner today? So
yes, yeah, exactly. This is the only problem of us today. This is the problem of the first world. Where shall we have dinner? How about the Italian place? No, we've been there yesterday. How about Japanese? I don't know. This is the problem. So you could, if you look at the economy, that the role of the economy to make majority of population not worry about food, we've arrived to a stationary economy state.
Thank you very much. Any questions, remarks, comments?
Yeah. What strategy should the developing countries follow regarding growth? Developing countries' problem regarding growth is not the same as the Japanese one.
Yeah. So that's a good question. My speech was only to our Western civilization. The situation with developing countries is completely different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What strategy would you, or do you have any solution for them?
I mean, their wealth has to grow. They are hungry and they don't have any good education and they don't have roads. That's a completely different situation. They truly need to. I mean, there's nothing wrong with growth. I mean, everything wants to grow, from plants, but they all grow to a certain state. And my point is that we are, pretty much here. When you are here, it's okay to grow. And also, I was thinking about this. We even want to grow spiritually. If you ask, I don't know, Pope Francis or Saint Paul from the New Testament, whether he is spiritually grown, they will all tell you, no, I need to grow more, I need to be better, I need to be, how is the Christian joke? Last year, I had to do a lot of work because I was very sinful, but this year I'm perfect.
Thank you very much.
It doesn't work that way. So the everything living wants to grow, and actually that's a very good question. And my point is that the economy as an entity, I also really look I know this is a little bit mythological, but try to look at just for a second, that the economy is in fact an entity that wants to grow. It has an energy of its own. It has a will of its own. It has a logic of its own, and it has a charm of its own. And the economy wants to grow. It is our role to say, okay, enough. Otherwise, it will outgrow us, and like Golem of Prague, it will have too much power.
Thank you very much. We will have a session in the afternoon of post-growth economics, and we try to think of this mechanism, how to teach the economy not to grow anymore. But definitely it's us humans who have to control it.
We don't need to teach it. The economy wouldn't grow. I mean, if we wouldn't be stimulating it all the time, we would be having zero growth. And we would have to think, okay, what are we doing now? And this is also maybe one more problem. Because we believe in these tricks, we are forgetting the real solutions. If we really want to grow, the real solution is reform, education, infrastructure, and working on our spirit and being able to, I think the biggest growth potential is in being able to organize peacefully a very large number of people. That's what we should do. But because we believe in these fiscal and monetary tricks, we are forgetting about the real, and we are fiddling our way around. We should forget about growth and focus the economy on the things that it should be. Taking care of the poor, making sure that the situation is just, etc., etc. In other words, take the milk that we have and start working with it. Stop beating the cow for not giving you more.
Thank you very much, Tomáš. We really enjoyed. We could listen to you till the evening, but you deserved a couple of water, and we must continue with the next presenter. Thanks a lot. We will continue.
Thank you very much.
Akkor most harmadszor is valóban átadnám a szót Viki Langának, aki a Soproni Egyetemről jött, agrár gazdálkodással foglalkozik.